pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. DeAndrea, roll call, please.
Mr. Balka.
Here.
Mrs. Bacco, Mrs. Bloom. Here. Mr. Brzezinski.
Here.
Mrs. DePinto. Mr. McEnone. Mrs. Trapp.
Here.
Mr. Walsh.
Here.
Mr. Syak.
Here. Yeah, do we have an agenda?
Yes. It was sent home for you.
Oh, I figured you would have a hard copy for us.
Oh, I apologize, I
Hold
put them
on.
out there. I didn't realize they were for the board also. My apologies.
I guess you had a question.
I did, I didn't realize they were for the board also.
Gwen, we're usually very organized.
Quite well taken.
There we go. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Frank. Your secretary gave me one.
I did that too. All right, Dr. Alfano, we will start with you and proceed with your superintendent's report.
Okay, finance, $6,500 for the superintendent search. And personnel, I'm retiring. That concludes my report.
You saved your shortest report for last. Can I have a motion to approve the superintendent's report? Oh, well, yeah. Open it up to the public. Anyone wish to speak for any item on the agenda? Okay,
I
hearing
have a
none.
question.
Sure.
Are we going to discuss this before we vote on it? The New Jersey School Board? I thought that was, we were going to discuss this.
Well, I mean, in terms of a process overview?
Yeah, well, I mean, it just so happens there's no public, but I thought that was the point. We were
No,
going
we-
to present it to the public. She's not going to tell us anything.
She's not going to tell us anything unless we hire her.
Aren't
but
you
no,
going to tell us
if-
what you're going to do or
If
whatever?
if you would prefer we do that first, that we have no issue with that. Gwen, if you could take us through the search process.
Mr. President, I'm going to vote no on B1.
And that would be on the retirement of the superintendent?
Yes.
Sure, yeah, which I appreciate. Good evening. My name is Gwen Thornton. Thank you very much. I'm generally loud enough to be heard without a mic. My name is Gwen Thornton. I'm the field service representative from New Jersey School Boards Association. I handle Middlesex counties, and I have worked with your board previously on a couple of occasions. It's actually a pleasure to be here. One of the things that the association provides boards with when requested is assistance in doing a superintendent search. Clearly, this is the most important task that the board is going to undertake in the next 3 to 5 years. The reason I say 3 to 5 years is because I'm sure most of you know that, in fact, a superintendent's minimum contract is by statute 3 years, a maximum of 5 years. There have been a number of factors that have influenced superintendent search across the state, and I think it's worthy of a few minutes worth of the board's time just to provide you with sort of an overview and a context of the conditions that prevail out there in the marketplace. As all of you know, several years ago, the governor saw fit to impose superintendent salary caps on superintendents. They are the only person with such a cap in the state of New Jersey. Those caps are based solely on student enrollment. It takes into account no background, years of experience, education, or other kinds of skill sets possessed by superintendents. So in the last several years, in many counties, we have seen a dramatic loss of experienced school leaders. In Bergen and Monmouth County, for example, there has been a turnover of more than 50%. It has disproportionately impacted school districts in the central and the northern part of the state, with less impact in some of the southern counties. For the first several years of my work with the association, I worked in Burlington, Camden, and Gloucester. Because of the cost of living is significantly less in the southern part of the state, it has had much less of an impact. So that's one factor that you have to consider as you move forward with this. And that is not to say that there still are not qualified applicants out there, but I'd like to give you a general sense of what is transpiring. Additionally, the legislature also saw fit to pass what is known as New Jersey First legislation, which requires that anyone who works in a public school district or a state employee or college or university, with some exceptions for Fulbright scholars, have 1 year within which to move in and become a permanent resident in the state of New Jersey. We could debate the merits of that policy, but my point is that it has had a limiting effect of people coming in perhaps from out of state, not so much here, but in counties, for example, where I have done searches, for example, Cherry Hill, which is right over the bridge from New Jersey, literally, you can be in Philadelphia in 10 minutes, traffic allowing. Certainly, that has had a chilling effect as well. Also in 1990-91, the legislature eliminated tenure for superintendents. Prior to 1990, superintendents accrued tenure in the same way that all of your certificated staff accrued tenure prior to the new Teach-NJ law, where it was 4 years. It used to be 3 years, and superintendents used to accrue that as well. When they eliminated tenure for superintendents, they eliminated automatic reciprocity for out-of-state certifications. It used to be someone coming in from Delaware, someone coming in from New York or Pennsylvania, Connecticut, would automatically be granted a CSA certificate, and you must hold a Chief School Administrative Certificate or a certificate of eligibility to be a superintendent here in the state of New Jersey. When they eliminated tenure in 1990-91, they eliminated that automatic reciprocity between states for CSA certificates. So even a seated superintendent who may have 10, 15, or 20 years experience coming in from another state has to go through a mentoring process in order to get their permanent certificate in the state of New Jersey. So those three pieces are really sort of controlling the marketplace currently and having an impact around superintendent searches. That being said, we as an association do about 80% of the searches across the state for boards of education, and we have been very successful. When I talk about search, I often talk about the 6 C's of search. First of all, you need to have in place a comprehensive plan to move forward, and that's something that we are beginning this evening with the board if you so decide to work with us in that process, meaning we will handle all aspects of the search until such time as you have a seated superintendent. Once that happens, we also talk about the need in a superintendent search for confidentiality. Superintendents and other perhaps assistant superintendents will apply for this position with an expectation that their confidentiality will be maintained throughout all of that process. As a result of that, the only ones that are privy to information regarding the actual candidates that apply for a search are going to be the Board of Education. This is a consensus-driven process, which means at the end of the day, all 9 of you are going to have to come to agreement as to who the next person that's going to sit in the superintendent's seat is going to be. Because of the times we live in, I will tell you, and because there are 9 of you, and at a minimum 3 of you are elected every year, it is possible that a seated superintendent in 3 years can end up with a board that has no one left on the board that has appointed them. So it is very important that the board be collectively behind the candidate that they choose to sit in that seat. So consensus means you might not all get your first choice, but whoever it is that you determine has the skill set and the level of expertise needed, along with being a good fit for the district, whoever that person may be, he or her, either sex, because let's not forget the women here, whoever that happens to be at the end of the day, you want to make sure that the board is fully supportive of that individual coming in, because at the end of 3 years, while it's not likely here, I know you don't have great turnover on your board, it is very possible for someone to be in a situation where no one is left who is appointed him or her after 3 years. So that's important as well. So you need to maintain confidentiality. You need to have a comprehensive plan in place. You need to make sure that it is comprehensive, that you have a legally defensible search so that there is no cause of action that can be brought against the district for perhaps a misstep in the process as we go through all of this. You also need to be mindful that with the implementation of the accountability regs, contracts look dramatically different today than they did perhaps when Dr. Alfano came on board. So one of the pieces we will go through and work with you is to have one of our labor relations consultants come in and talk to you about the kinds of pieces that you can put in place in a superintendent's contract. So while we have a cap, we also have now the opportunity to put into place, and I know you're aware of this, merit goals for superintendents, because if you were to hire someone at cap, you want to be able to at least provide some kind of raise for that person over the tenure of their contract within your district. So that being said, it's important that you understand the kinds of pieces that need to be included in those merit goals. Keep in mind that is a once-a-year payment. It is not pensionable. It does not get added into the base of the superintendent's salary. And of course, the board is not the final arbiter of whether those goals have been achieved and whether you can pay the bonus. It has to both at its inception, when you develop the goals, be approved by your executive county superintendent, and before you can pay out those that money attached to those goals, you have to have the approval of your executive county superintendent as well. So that's an important piece to consider as you move forward, is thinking about the contract. And continuity. We are going to be with you from beginning to the end. It will be almost as important once you identify the candidate that you wish to bring into the district and they start in your district, that you talk about doing some transition work. There are going to be some bumps on the road. I said this once in Hudson County, and they told me I could never say it again. I said, well, you all know where the bodies are buried. And they went, Gwen, can't say that in Hudson. But I think it's safe here. I mean it allegorically. I don't mean it literally. But you know where all of those potential bumps on the road are as the board. And part of your responsibility is to make sure that you work collaboratively with the new superintendent so that he or she doesn't accidentally make a misstep that doesn't need to be made, as long as you've done that transition work to talk about how are we going to work together, how are we going to communicate effectively. It doesn't mean that it's bad or good. It will simply be different than what you are currently accustomed to, because it will be different as you move forward. And I know you would like to be able to clone your current superintendent, and I appreciate and understand that. Very large shoes to fill. But it's something that you're going to have to deal with. So making sure that there's continuity in the process. I'm going to be here regardless of how you do that search. I am still going to be your field service rep, and we'll work with you as you make that transition to a new individual coming into the process. I think it's important for the board to understand that when you change superintendents, especially when you've had a very successful, long-standing superintendent, it is going to generate a certain level of uncertainty, particularly among your staff. If there's anything we have seen in education in the last 2 years in the state of New Jersey, it's that things continue to change at rather breakneck speed. And we could talk about the adoption of the Common Core. We could talk about Teach NJ, we can change in tenure, change in evaluation. We can talk about the coming of the PARCC assessments. There has been a great deal of change. So you add a change in your superintendent to all of that other change, it's not surprising that it would generate a level of, I don't want to say angst, but certainly uncertainty for your staff. So I think it's important for the board to communicate. While you can't share candidates with your community and your staff, you can share process. As part of our process, we will come in and meet with your staff, both your administrative staff, your teaching staff. We will come in and meet with your community, go through the calendar that we've identified with you as a Board of Education, share with them the ad that you are going to perhaps develop and use for that, ask them for their input. Use both staff and administration and community input for candidate review documents and to develop very specific interview questions so that your staff and your community have an opportunity to have input into this process. You're going to be turning over your school district to someone brand new, so it's important that you do a number of rounds of interviews as well as other kinds of activities in this process. So we recommend strongly, but again, I can't say you absolutely have to do this, but we like to have at least 2 rounds of interviews. I like to have your candidates, when you narrow it down, come in and do a presentation, because communication is such a key skill for superintendents. You need to be able to have someone in place who can communicate not just with your staff, but also your community, with your students, with your parents, with senior citizens, with all stakeholders across your community in the educational process. You may wish to consider going in and doing a district visit when you get down to a finalist level, meaning that you would go out and visit some classrooms in their district, meet some of their representative stakeholders, some of their faculty, some of their board members, and so forth. We would handle all of the details of all of that and set that up. You can't send more than 4 members, because then you have a quorum and you have to advertise it as a board meeting, but certainly a committee of 4 members of the board could do that. We also strongly recommend that when you get down to a finalist, you have them come into the district, spend a day in the district, go to some teacher classrooms at all levels, elementary, middle, and high school, to meet with representatives of your associations, to meet with some community members, PTO, staff, those people who you identify are critical to the process, and ask for their feedback. At the end of the day, the board is legally responsible for hiring the superintendent, but as much data as you can collect through the process, it's important to have that data, and it's important to include your community and your staff as much as you can in the process, while still maintaining the confidentiality of the process itself, the names of the candidates and so forth. So that pretty much runs you through the process from beginning to end. I am here with you, working for you. You will create with my assistance. I facilitate the search. I don't do the search. Every decision that is made in this search belongs to the Board of Education. Every piece of paper that we take in comes back to the Board of Education. We have an application. It can be done online. I will be sharing with you, if you decide, that application. We also ask that in addition to filling out the application, which is a rather lengthy process, how many of you have had kids do the Common App? It looks somewhat like that. It's pretty complicated, only in the sense that it takes a little while to do it. They upload all of their supportive documentation, which includes their transcripts. It includes their certifications. We ask them to include their latest evaluation from their superior, so that you have a copy of that. We ask them to include an evaluation that they have written of a subordinate who is in need of improvement, as well as an evaluation of a subordinate who is doing a good job. We know that being able to recruit and retain highly qualified staff is absolutely key to the success of your district. We know from research, you know that the quality of instruction in the classroom is the largest component piece to student success, along with school climate and culture. And so we like to have you have all of that to be able to read. It's a very comprehensive application. We also ask you to identify 2 or 3 areas of interest to the board in terms of perhaps issues that you may be dealing with: overcrowding, reconfiguration, referenda, whatever happens to be at the top of your plate. As a Board of Education, we ask them to write short answer essays so that it provides a writing sample for you as well. So again, all of these are various data points that you are able to collect as you're going through and reviewing the applications and determining who you want to interview. I deliver to you every single application in a weighted pool. That weighted pool is divided into 3 categories. Those individuals who apply who meet and exceed the criteria you have established in your ad, those people who apply who meet the criteria, and then there are always a few who apply who don't meet the criteria. You can't legally interview them and have a defensible process, but you get all of those materials, so you will be able to see the totality of the pool of everyone who has expressed an interest and applied for the Sayreville position. And that's pretty much how the process runs. We will be here with you from beginning to end. And I am always available all the time if you have questions or concerns. We recommend that you advertise your position in the Newark Star Ledger. It is the newspaper of record even still, even considering the internet. We track on the applications where our applicants come from. When I started doing searches about 10, plus years ago, about 90% of our candidates came from newspaper or print advertisements. Now it's, it has shifted, and so now it's about 70-30. 70% come from the internet, 30% come from print. We will post your ad on our website, NJASA's website, which is the Superintendent's Association, PSA, Principals and Supervisors, ASBO, your business administrators. We distribute the ad to all of the 21 county roundtables where superintendents meet. Additionally, we send it to all the college and universities that have superintendent academies or institutes where they're pursuing their EDDs, such as the University of Pennsylvania, TCNJ, Seton Hall, Rowan, and so forth and so on, University of Massachusetts, Harvard. So it does get very wide exposure, but we still recommend that you do at least minimal advertising in the Newark Star Ledger as a way of getting the word out so that it's very visible to everyone. Okay? Questions that I can answer, because sometimes as I run through this, I may leave out a component piece that you have questions about.
All right, I'll start with the board. Any questions? Mr. McEnroe?
How do you mentioned about protecting the confidentiality of the candidates on their end.
Mhm.
How do you do that if you're going to go visit their district?
That's when you get down to a finalist. And at that point, they will have to share with their employer that in fact they're a finalist in a district, and their confidentiality then is but that's their choice at that point in time. Certainly you don't go visit every candidate's district. You wouldn't have time, nor would you want to spend the time doing that. It's when you get down to a finalist. And then they would have to share. The other really important piece to this is reference checking. I do the initial reference checks on the candidates, but when you get down to a finalist, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if I'm comfortable with the candidate. What matters is that each of the 9 of you are comfortable. As a part of that, I really strongly urge and almost require all 9 of you to check at least one reference as part of our application. Candidates sign off that you will be checking references beyond those that are listed. To be perfectly honest, those of you who work, I'm sure on your resumes or when you apply for a position, list references that say you walk on water in your spare time. I know that's what I would have on my resume if I were looking for a position. And when I was looking for a position, that's what I made sure I had on my resume. So doing your due diligence and going beyond those that are listed is absolutely critical, and I will work with you through that process. But I like to have every board member check at least one reference, because you are here, you are accountable to your community, they're going to hold you accountable. Other questions?
Any other board members? Mrs. Backo?
One question is just yes or no.
Oh, please.
Labor relations consultant that you mentioned.
Yes.
Is that an attorney?
They are both attorneys,
They're both
yes.
attorneys. And the other question, you said you meet with the staff and the community to get input. Is this one time you have like a public meeting? How do you do that?
Have an open public meeting. I will also post for you give you a site to post on the internet. In other words, on your website, I shouldn't say the internet, on your website, to a survey with those very questions, so that if a staff member cannot attend or a community member can't attend because it's not convenient, they will have a way to have input into the process. I will compile all of those survey results verbatim, meaning it's not filtered through what I think they said or what I say they said. It will be their actual words, which I think is important. That comes back to you, the board, so that you can see it, review it, digest it. So I do a public meeting, and as well as the staff is open to any member of the staff. I will arrange to do that at a time that is convenient for the staff at the end of their school day, so they're not having to come back to school to do that. We try to make it as convenient as possible for them, so that they're not having to come out again at night. Because I know some staff may live very locally, but some may be at a distance and may want to hear this essentially similar conversation that we're having right now and then to provide some input. I give them a copy of an agenda for the meeting, copy of the calendar, copy of the ad, copy of the survey questions. I give them an email address so that they can email me back their feedback if they would prefer, rather than speaking at a meeting. I give them a fax number in case they want to fax it in. I also give them a snail mail address in case they want to do the snail mail piece. I don't have time, nor do I have the technological skills to track back somebody's URL. I simply ask that if they want to email me in their feedback, they just put Sayreville in the subject line and staff, so I'll know it's a staff member and where to put it. And I would add that to the survey data that comes from the internet. I don't edit it. I don't correct it for spelling. And only because I'm not editing it, okay? So that you have their input verbatim, not filtered through what I see or think, but actually what the staff has said, what your community has said, okay? And we ask them, for example, what they have identified are the strengths of the district. What do they see from their perspective are the challenges over the course of the next 3 to 5 years? What are the kinds of professional experiences does the superintendent have to have had to come here and be successful? Because Sayreville is not the district next to you. Every district has its own culture. And it's important that you find someone who has not only the skill set, but the personal qualities and personality to be able to be successful here. I mean, we can talk about quantifying all of those skills, but there's a piece of this that is about board member perception and interaction. I think it's critically important for you to know that for the interviews, short of being in ICU, I have an expectation that the full board be present, because there is nonverbal as well as verbal communication that takes place in an interview. And yes, we can get a release and we can videotape an interview with the candidate's permission, but you miss that interaction between and that nonverbal communication between the candidate and the board. I think sometimes that can be almost as valuable as responses to questions the candidates have.
So then there are 2 separate meetings you hold, one for the staff, one for the public.
Correct.
And are they both open to the public? Is it
Yes.
Advertised public meetings? Or-
Typically, the staff one is for staff. But there are some staff members who are also community members who may have something going on in the afternoon that we do the meeting if we do it after school, and so sometimes they will come at night as a community member. And it's sort of their choice, how they perceive themselves. It doesn't, at the end of the day, the important piece is the input.
And is it better that the board be at those meetings or
No, I
not
would
at those
prefer that the
meetings?
board not be present at those meetings. While you're not intimidating or overly imposing to me, perhaps. I know that staff sometimes feels more comfortable. I'm a stranger, I'm not going to, and I tell them why you're not there, that I've asked you not to be present, so it's not as though the community is going to say, well, the board didn't care enough to come. That's not it at all. I make sure that they understand that I've asked you not to attend. I tell the staff exactly the same thing. And at the end of the day, it's their opportunity to speak. They can come to a board meeting if they would like additionally, and hopefully they would, and if they have additional comments or questions or concerns. But it really is their opportunity. I won't remember them, and it's not going to be for attribution. It's not going to say, Mrs. Smith from the 5th grade said. It will simply say, here's what the staff said. Here's what our community said.
So we don't attend either?
No, you do not have to attend
Oh,
either.
We don't attend the community either?
No. Now, I do know that board members do tend sometimes to send their neighbor, their significant other, their aunt, and you're welcome to do that, and if you really insist, you of course could come, but I think your community sometimes feels more comfortable without you being there, because they know you're a board member, they might feel perhaps constrained in what they had to say. It's a board decision. Typically, board members spend enough time out at meetings. And so, I'm not going to say anything to your community that I wouldn't say to you that I haven't said to you. So either way. But my recommendation is that you not be there for those reasons.
I'm
And-
interested in what the community has to say, and also what the staff. I
Well, that's what we're
understand
doing, we're gonna
the
get all
staff.
that feedback though,
Right.
you know.
And I think we
Filtered.
may get more open and honest feedback if we're not there,
Exactly,
because
right.
there is, they're free to say whatever they want. And believe me, they will say what they want.
And that's fine.
And you said that we would each receive all of the applications?
Yes, you will receive a box with every single application.
Well,
And
the
all-
board will as a whole. Where
As a
every-
whole.
Every board member is not getting their individual copy.
No, the board as a whole will get the box of all of the materials that we collect, and that's every single piece of paper. It
Okay.
belongs to you, the board.
Right. And you also said that you would recommend that all 9 of us were in support of the same,
Candidate,
Decision to-
ultimately, yes.
right. But if we're not,
If you're not, you're not.
as long as it's, I guess, what, 4?
Five.
Because
It-
Lucy's involved in that?
Yeah, we have one board member who has a relative that's employed in the district.
They are conflicted out of the process.
Correct, so she will not be in attendance. I invited her to this, unfortunately, she's got a stomach virus. But beyond
Okay.
this meeting, she
Okay.
will not be involved.
Okay.
So we still need 5.
Correct.
You do, and again, I think you will find that this is a really exciting process in a lot of ways. It also, and I know you're looking at me like, are you kidding? But I have seen it time and time again, and it also, the consensus will come. You will, build it and they will come. You will actually see that happening. You really will over time. Because we're going to work on developing criteria, and we're going to have input from your community and from your staff that have a different perspective than you do around, here are what they've identified are the challenges. Here's the kinds of things that we need to have in the next superintendent. And you'll begin to see a profile really emerge of what the next superintendent needs to be and have, if that makes any sense.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you, Gwen.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
I guess a few comments or some housekeeping items here. First of all, we did not have Dr. Alfano announce his retirement at tomorrow's meeting because tomorrow is our Let the Children Lead program, and we thought it might be a little awkward having the student announce his retirement. So we chose it in this forum. I know there's not a lot of public here, but we are on TV. I would like to extend on behalf of the Board of Education our thanks to Dr. Alfano for a decade of leadership at the helm of the Saraville Public Schools. He came in during a particularly trying time and a very difficult transition, and he walked in and really hit the ground running 10 years ago. And since that time, I mean, we've literally built buildings under his leadership. He's brought a staff together. He's provided instructional leadership. I've watched strategic plans go through evolutions under his leadership. And, two things that I think really define Frank Alfano are, one, his integrity. There was never any question or any rumors or any innuendo floating around that questioned who he was or what he stood for. And number two would be his passion and his commitment. Dr. Alfano really wore his heart on his sleeve in this district. He really bled blue and gray, our school colors here at SWMHS, and he was here for our students and our faculty, and it was truly what Dr. Alfano was about. You always knew how he felt. Very definitely an emotional guy, both for better or for worse, but truly an outstanding leader, and he's really taken this district far, and he's kept kids at the forefront. So, Dr. Alfano, I want to thank you for 10 years of great leadership of the Saraville Public Schools. We will have many further opportunities to honor you. I've encouraged him to allow us to have a dinner to recognize him. I'm hoping he takes that under advisement. But Dr. Alfano, great job. Thank you.
Mr. Sayak, I've worked for him for 6 years. I have things I want to say to him, but I'm going to reserve those and leave them for his last meeting.
That's fine.
It's more public here.
Also, in terms of the process that we're going through, Gwen has outlined it, but for the benefit of the public at home, for the benefit of the staff, this is an open and honest search. There has been no internal candidate who has been already presumed a favorite. There is no internal candidate who has already been excluded. You'll notice that Mrs. Facendo is not here tonight. The only thing that you should read into that is the fact that she has a family commitment in Florida and has a personal day that was scheduled months in advance, way before Dr. Alfano retired. So this is truly an open and honest search. I think that concludes. Any other board members with comments? And by the way, I have a cold, in case you can't tell. I'll open it up to public for any comments regarding the agenda. Yes.
Marlene Lewandowski, 112 Whitehead Avenue. You had made mention of the calendar. We don't have a whole lot of time. Do we have a calendar set for this search?
Gwen has prepared a proposed calendar. As a component of that calendar, just to give you the high level, the applications, again, this is all subject to board approval, but the applications will be due April 10th. And based upon the interview schedule, we'll be interviewing in late April, doing any finalist visits, checking references, et cetera, in mid to early May, early to mid-May, and then with an appointment by the end of May. That person typically would have to give anywhere from 60 to 90 days' notice, depending upon where they're currently sitting. So that would basically put them at an August 1 or September 1 start date. So we are looking to get someone on as soon as possible, which is why Gwen is here basically less than a week after Dr. Alfano has announced.
Okay, so no more applications after April 10th.
Again, that's all subject to board approval, but that's the tentative calendar we'll be considering.
Thank you.
Anyone else for public? All right, hearing none, we'll close public, and I'll take a motion to approve the superintendent's report.
So with regret for being one.
I have a motion with regret. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Mrs. DePinto. Any remarks on the superintendent's report? Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Bowker?
Yes.
Mrs. Bacco?
Yes.
Mr. Brzezinski?
Yes.
Mrs. DePinto?
Yes.
Mr. McEnon?
Yes.
Mrs. Trapp?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Sire?
Yes. All right, Gwen, I believe that's all you have for public. The board will now retire into executive session. We're going to review what she has prepared with regard to the advertisement and discussion of things that should be in that advertisement and the qualities that we're looking for us personally in a superintendent. And we will get back to the staff and the community when the dates have been set for the community input forums.
Mr. President, I make a motion to go into closed.
A motion to go into executive. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Mr. Walsh. And this will be on personnel superintendent search.
I do need to read it first. Whereas Section 80 of the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, PL 1975, permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances, and whereas this public body is the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, now therefore it be resolved by the Board of Education, Borough of Sayreville, County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey as follows. The public shall be excluded from discussion of the action upon the herein after specified subject matters. General nature of the subject matter to be discussed is as follows. Superintendent search. It is anticipated at this time that the above stated subject matter shall be made public at such time as the need for non-disclosure no longer exists. This resolution shall take effect immediately. Mr. Balka?
Yes.
Mrs. Bacco?
Yes.
Mr. Brzezinski?
Yes.
Mrs. DePinto?
Yes.
Mr. McEnon?
Yes.
Mrs. Trapp?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
And Mr. Sire.
Yes. All right, thank you very much. There will be no action when we return other than to adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you.